Chapter 581, The New Year's Eve. Yes, yes, yes. Hu was overjoyed and kept nodding his head. Liu Dong looked very strict, but in fact, he had approved their relationship. At that time, even Xiaoling, who was sitting by, covered her mouth and sniggered. Liu Jian pursed her lips and snorted, "Dad, since you promised me, I can also accept a stepmother. What about Sister Xiaoling?" Swish. Xiaoling's face turned red, and she lowered her head bashfully. It was only recently that Liu Jian found out about it. She thought that if she and Hu got married in the future, her father would be very lonely. In fact, she understood a lot of things, but she didn't know how to deal with them. Liu Qingfeng's mouth quivered a little when he heard it. He said angrily, "That's enough. Stop bothering me. You'd better take care of yourself and drive back now." With that, he gave an order to the driver at the front, who quickly took out his walkie-talkie and told the team to leave the airport slowly. Tansan, Liu Qingfeng's bodyguard, looked at Hu and coughed softly. "Chairman Liu, Hu seems to be a promising man." He was frank and sincere. Tansan liked Hu's character, but he was also frightened by his growth speed. Tansan could easily defeat Hu before, but the situation had been completely reversed. In his opinion, with such a son-in-law, Chairman Liu didn't have to hesitate at all. But as a father, Liu Qingfeng was still reluctant to give his daughter to another man. Even when he was on the plane, he thought about how Zhang Han would face such a thing once Meng grew up in the future. According to Zhang Han's character, Liu Qingfeng thought that Meng's boyfriend might be beaten, maimed or even killed. As for his daughter and Hu, Liu Qingfeng was still unwilling to accept their relationship. Although he knew that Hu, who was supported by Zhang Han, was a good choice and could protect Liu Jian, he didn't know if they could keep going like this. Well, forget it. Let her experience the things related to love. Liu Qingfeng sighed silently and made this promise. Along the way, Hu carefully chatted with Liu Qingfeng. Even though Liu Qingfeng hardly ever paid attention to him, he still tried to find a common topic. In Hu's opinion, he could be embarrassed, but he couldn't make others feel embarrassed. Liu Jian was in a troubled mood, so she occasionally echoed Hu. After they drove into the city, Liu Qingfeng looked at Hu and smiled. "Aren't you going home for the New Year? Today is New Year's Eve. Why are you still in Linhai?" asked Liu Qingfeng. That was to ask about Hu's family. Hu nodded and answered, "I lost my parents when I was 13 years old. I left my hometown and went to many cities. Finally, I came to Hong Kong and became a gangster. Soon I began to follow Brother Feng, and some of Brother Feng's men had the same background as I. To be honest, they all like to hang out. But we're not bad guys, therefore, we still work together now as members of Meng's security." "I see." Liu Qingfeng sighed slowly. Life and death are natural laws. Whether you accept them or not, the results cannot be changed. Have a New Year's Eve dinner with us tonight. We'll have a happy time. Thank you. Hu's eyes lit up. Then he hesitated and said, "Chairman Liu, if you feel lonely, 7 of my friends, including Brother Feng, are in Linhai." In fact, Hu was still a little shaky when facing Liu Qingfeng alone. "Don't they have to accompany Han?" "Oh yes, they are going to the wrong family for the New Year, and they don't need to be accompanied. You can invite all of them." Liu Qingfeng nodded. So it was settled for the time being. On the other side, Zhang Han and the others had a lot of special snacks at noon and drove to Zhujiajiao in the afternoon. Rong Han was very excited along the way. She not only acted as a temporary guide, but also took many photos with Xian. Zhujiajiao was famous for its wonderful mountains and lakes. There was a 47 square kilometer fan-shaped town in Zhujiajiao, inlaid in the landscape of lakes and mountains. Some people regarded it as Venice in Shanghai and a pearl next to the Dianshan Lake. It was one of the 4 famous cultural towns in Linhai. There were many rivers in the town and thousands of buildings in the Ming and Qing dynasties were built near the water. 36 stone bridges in the town were still made in the ancient style, and there were many places of interest. It was an interesting place to visit. Zhang Han and the others got on the boat and strolled around the ancient town, which was very pleasant. They enjoyed themselves until 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and then they returned home. After a simple dinner in a restaurant, Zhang Han and Meng Meng went back to the Peninsula Hotel, while Rongsheng and the others went back to the Rong family. On the New Year's Eve, they, as the elder generation of their family, should be present. They left Rong Han to accompany Zhang Han until 10 o'clock in the evening. After Xian finished the program, they went to the Rong family estate together. Back at the hotel, Meng Meng sat on the sofa in the living room. Zhang Han turned on the TV for her and Meng Meng began to watch a cartoon. At that moment, Rong Han took out 2 bottles of Coke and a small pack of milk, then sat next to Zhang Han. Instead of watching the cartoon, she looked at Zhang Han secretly. Finally, Zhang Han chuckled a few minutes later. "What's the matter? Do I have flowers on my face?" Rong Han heard the words and covered her mouth with a smile. "No, I'm just curious about how you pursued Xian successfully." "Well." Zhang Han thought about it and replied, "It was very difficult. If the small accident called Meng Meng didn't happen, Zhang Han would have kept trying to pursue Xian at her company. However, they had also experienced a lot together, including the affair of Qiaoluoluo, and their romance was actually not so romantic. At that time, Xian didn't know much about Zhang Han, so she was easy to be provoked. If that happened again and Xian was shown 100 photos, she wouldn't believe it. "Tell me about it," Rong Han asked. "Let Xian tell you about this." Zhang Han shook his head slightly. "Do you have a boyfriend now?" During the conversation, Zhang Han also looked at Rong Han. She had single-layer eyelid and an oval face, which was not special but it was lovely. "I don't have boyfriend now. I had one while in college, but we parted ways after graduating," Rong Han replied. "Do you work now?" Zhang Han asked casually. "Yes, I work as a clerk at a department of my uncle's company." Rong Han curled her lips and said, "I always work hard and I didn't ask my uncle for help at all. Our eldest uncle didn't take care of us. I was promoted to the position of clerk from the grassroots level step by step." It seemed that the branch of Zhang Han's mother didn't have a high position in the Rong family, and even Rong Han had to work hard to be a clerk. "Your uncle is Patriarch Rong?" Zhang Han asked. "Yes." Rong Han nodded, but she found it strange. "Isn't my uncle your uncle as well?" "Cousin, you don't know much about us, I'll tell you about it." Rong Han's straightened her body and continued, "Now my third grandfather is the eldest in the family, and he is called Rong Chenjiang. He is always practicing martial arts with several of my uncles and hardly cares about his family. Rong Zhenxing, my eldest uncle, is the leader of the Rong family. He has the final say in everything related to the family and he is in charge of the Rong Tai business company. My second uncle, Rong Zhenmao, is also powerful. He is the chief of the Department of Transportation. Both of them are sons of my eldest grandfather, who has 3 sons and 2 daughters. My third uncle is a major in the army, and thanks to his support, the other people in his branch are all high-layer members respected in the Rong family. As for my third grandfather's branch, Rong Jin, my youngest uncle, is an excellent businessman who owns 2 big companies. Those 2 companies are branches of the family group. They are actually under the control of Rong Jin and they live a happy life with my third grandfather's support. As for the branch of 4th grandfather, 5th grandfather and my father, they are quite normal when compared with the other branches." At the end of the speech, Rong Han stuck out her tongue. "Of course, I got all the information from the adults in my home. In terms of population, the Rong family was a big family. In the branch of Patriarch Rong, there was an officer and a businessman. There was a major in the branch of the second grandfather. The branch of the third grandfather focused on business. The other family members were not as close to the core layer. All those mentioned were immediate family members, their wives, husbands, children and other relatives were not included. The competition is fiercer for us of the younger generation, but we don't get much cultivation resources. Zhang Han told Zhang Han about her family. Although she didn't get along with Zhang Han for a long time, Zhang Han liked Zhang Han's family a lot because of Xian and Meng. She was willing to share with them some of her thoughts. They continued the conversation as they watched the cartoon. Meng began to feel a little sleepy at 10:30. Zhang Han changed the channel to watch the New Year's party program of Lin Hai. Meng suddenly cheered up when she saw Xian appear like a fairy in a crystal dress. Wow, it's Mama in on stage. She is going to sing a song. My sister-in-law is so beautiful. Zhang Han was surprised. Zhang Han was smiling proudly. It's said that Snow White is running away, Little Red is worried about the wolf, the Mad Hatter likes Alice, and the ugly duckling will become a white swan. Xian's beautiful voice resounded, accompanied by all kinds of exquisite animations on the large screen in the background. Zhang Han sat there until the song was finished. Let's go to pick her up. He stood up. They went out, driving a Mercedes-Benz. They reached the TV station 10 minutes later, then they waited downstairs for 10 minutes before Xian, Xuanhuan came out from the side door. Xian got in Zhang Han's car. Xuanhuan got on a Mercedes in the parking lot and they went to the Wrong's home together. At the time, the Wrong family was also brilliant, and New Year ceremony was very lively in the big family. The Wrong family was living at the center of Linhai City, about a 20 minutes drive from Liu Qingfeng's villa. The area of the house was not very large. It was a house built in the period of the Republic of China, and it was usually inhabited by some of the elder members of the Wrong family. Many people of the younger generation were currently living in the high-rise residential area nearby. Chapter 582. The annual meeting of the Wrong family. The family house is ahead. Zhang Han took the lead as he drove. Zhang Han sat in the co-pilot seat while Xian and Meng sat in the back seats. Zifai and the others followed Zhang Han. Liang Hao and Liang Mengkai went to play with Zhao Feng and the others. Zhang Li had just arrived at the front of the house and waited for Zhang Han to go in. When Zhang Han finished speaking, Zhang Han took back his mobile phone. At that moment, Zhang Han grinned. Cousin, you answered a lot of phone calls tonight. Sister Yan, he answered a lot of phone calls. You have to be careful. He is very handsome. Don't let other little sisters rob him from you. Ha ha. Xian couldn't help laughing after hearing those words. She is wearing casual clothes at the moment. She had intended to wear some formal clothes, but in order to match Zhang Han's casual style, she finally dressed herself in some loose clothes. However, clothes were not so important when compared with her beautiful face. It was just a change of style. Hearing Zhang Han's words, Xian replied, "It depends on him, and I can't control it. I don't usually read his privacy information. Well, I'm not worried about him when I go out to work." Xian's words were intermittent, because she didn't tell Zhang Han something. But the meaning was clear enough. That was, she was very confident in Zhang Han. That's true, with Meng around, no other woman can get close to him. In fact, that was the upgrade of love. Xian felt very happy and warm at the moment. But then Xian asked curiously, "Who called you?" "Mama, there were too many people." Meng raised her little head and said, "It was grandfather, grandmother, and..." Meng's little face seemed to be petrified, and her clear big eyes didn't blink. It could be seen that she was thinking about the other people's names. "Who are they? What are their names? Oh, I forget it. My father-in-law and mother-in-law, several elders including Zilong, Uncle Zipeng, Aunt Dongling, Protector Leng, Mo Chengfeng, Liu Shan and Liu Chengwin. Besides, some people from the other families called me just now, but I don't know where they got my phone number." Zhang Han shook his head. Unconsciously, his interpersonal network became increasingly stronger. However, Zhang Han never relied on other than his own strength. If he was not merciless Zhang with such strength, They wouldn't even spare him a glance. The interpersonal network was related to strength and status, and all of Zhang Han's friends were pretty good. If Zhang Han was alone, he might not have made friends with anyone. But he currently had a family, and sometimes he needed help from others. So many people, I thought only my parents called you. Xian covered her mouth and smiled. There were many people watching her program at the Zi family house. 10 minutes after the program, Ziqiang and Zixiniu called her. It's the one ahead. Just then, Wang Han pointed to the house on the right. There was an iron fence enclosing the house and monitoring equipment at strategic points. Some trees were planted on the edge of the house. Some lights could be seen faintly through the trees. Driving forward for more than 50 meters, they could see close to 13 buildings, most of which were modern-style villas. Their view was limited. The real number of the houses must be more than that. They could see the front gate not far away. There was a Mercedes-Benz car parked at the side of the gate. After seeing the car on Zhang Han's side, the driver started up her car, and honked the car horn twice to signal that she was Zhang Li. Let's just drive in. The New Year's Eve dinner is in the big restaurant. There are many people, Wang Han explained. After Zhang Han drove in, Wang Han lowered the co-pilot's window and waved to the guard, "Open the door." The two guards looked carefully and found that she was a member of the Wang family. They opened the door directly and watched the three cars enter. The iron gate of the Wang family was also in the style of the Republic of China, which looked unique. The sign above read Residence of the Wang clan, or it could be called the Wang family. The restaurant was on the right side of the center. On the inner area there was a small ancient house, and on the outer area there were several villas built in the period of the Republic of China, all of which were original. Zhang Han activated his soul sense and scanned the whole Wang family in 2 seconds. Aside from Wang Ming, there were no other martial artists in the restaurant. There were more than a dozen martial artists in the backyard of the ancient house. The most powerful one was at the Grand Master early stage and close to middle stage. He should be Rong Chenjiang. As for the other martial artists, none of them were martial arts Grand Masters. While most of them were at the early stage, only some of them were at the heaven stage. There weren't many martial artists in the Wang family, and their strength was not strong, which might be the reason why the Wang family was not very competitive. When the financial resources developed to a certain extent, what was often needed was a breakthrough in another direction, for example, martial artists who represented absolute competitiveness. Han, here you are. Rongsheng and Jia Wei were standing at the parking lot next to the restaurant. They rushed to greet Zhang Han when they saw Zhang Han and his friends get off. Hello. After thinking about it, Meng remembered how to call them and waved her hand. Hey, Grandma, Grandpa. Hello. After replying to Meng, Jia Wei smiled. It's almost 11:30 now. I specially asked the kitchen to prepare dumplings for you, with meat and vegetable fillings. We have different dishes here, and there are ice cakes for the New Year's Eve. Papa, what will we have for our New Year's Eve dinner? Meng looked up and asked Zhang Han. Your father was born in the north, where we ate dumplings for the New Year. Your mother was born in Singapore, so for the New Year. Zhang Han looked at Xian. He didn't know what they had in Singapore. We also eat dumplings at home. Now we can also eat some other things. What's more special is the rich sashimi. We usually have a lot of food for the New Year, which is a symbol of good luck, Xian replied. The Spring Festival seemed to be more interesting in our childhood. Rongsheng smiled and shook his head. We didn't eat delicious food every day in the past, such as meat. When I was a child, we had little meat and I couldn't eat it at ordinary times, but in the New Year, no matter if you had enough money or not, every family would prepare a large number of dishes. It was a real feast for my appetite. There were many children playing together after dinner, which was very interesting. Now we have all kinds of dishes at ordinary times, and the Spring Festival gradually became a symbol for reunion. Of course, some Chinese still like to compare with others in terms of the New Year's dinner. At the end, Rongsheng sighed softly, while listening to the adults. Meng looked around with her clear big eyes, which was very cute. At the same time, a dozen round tables in the restaurant were full of people. Each branch of the family sat on one or two tables, and there were some collateral children. At one table on the right sat Rongyong, Wang Ming, Rong Jiaxin and Rongsheng's son. Different from other tables, they didn't move their chopsticks, even when faced with so much delicious food. It could be seen that the family members at each table were led by a small number of people. The centermost dining table was led by Rong Zhenxing, the patriarch of the Rong family. The next table was led by Rong Zhenmao, Rong Zhenxing's brother and the director of the Department of Transportation. The third table was led by Rong Fan, a major. As for Rong Chenjiang's table, it was led by Rong Jin, who was much younger. All the leaders were respected by the other family members. It showed that they were powerful and favored by the Rong family. The New Year's Eve dinner started at 11 o'clock in the evening. Rong Yong checked the time, then went to the centermost table. He leaned down to whisper something to Rong Zhenxing. "Patriarch, I have something to say to you this afternoon." At that time, you were busy outside. Before Rong Zhenxing could speak, his wife Wang Saibai said something first. "Yes, we went out to visit Wang Dong and some others, because we'll have the annual family meeting tomorrow." "So you talked to Zhenxing. Is it still about Rong Han's work?" "I've told you that she is not competent at present. It's better for her to work hard at the grassroots level for a few years. If she has the ability, we will certainly promote her. What's important now is the annual meeting tomorrow." Although her tone was gentle and warm, Rong Yong knew that she was rejecting him. At that time, Rong Yong looked at their son sitting on the side and thought, if you really want them to work hard from the grassroots level according to their abilities, how can your son directly serve as the president of a company? There were many family members, limited resources, and sometimes ability was not so important. As for the annual meeting of the Rong family, it was the summary of the year and the beginning of the new year. How to start a new year, that's when it came to social relationships. It was important to know how much cooperation could be brought to the family and how many people in high positions could come to attend the meeting. Rong Yong shook his head. His branch was often ignored in the annual meeting. He didn't place any hopes in it. Then he shook his head and said, "It's not about this. Jiali's son is coming here to celebrate the new year." "Oh." Rong Zhenxing frowned slightly. "Why is he coming here at this time? Why not come in the first day of the new year? Han is no longer a member of the Zhang family." Rong Yong explained, "And he is so powerful now, he is a..." Before he finished speaking, Rong Zhenxing took a glance at him and said, "Even the Zhang family refuses him?" "I don't know. I only know that he is very powerful now." Rong Yong saw this and suddenly didn't want to say it. According to their tone, it seemed that Jiali and Guangyi would bring them bad luck. He knew that if he told them that Zhang Han was a general, even Rong Zhenxing would go out to welcome Han with his men. But he didn't show any interest. He would rather sit in silence and enjoy the New Year's dinner. Even the patriarch would be stunned if he knew he had been promoted to bureau chief. "How many days will they stay at the Rong family estate?" Rong Zhenxing asked again. "I don't think they can stay here for long. They have something else to do," Rong Yong replied. Rong Zhenxing's eyebrows slightly eased after hearing the words. He nodded. "Okay, let them celebrate the new year with us. It's pathetic that they have nowhere to go during the Spring Festival." Chapter 583, A Veiled Abuse. After hearing the words, Rong Yong sighed and nodded slightly. When he was about to take a step, Wang Saibai, Rong Zhenxing's wife, said in a slightly frivolous tone, "What the elders said was right. Jiali shouldn't have married him, but she just didn't listen to us. Now, she's going to die with the others, and she can't even look after her children, who have to come to her mother's house for the new year. How miserable they are." She laid down her chopsticks and looked at Rong Yong. "It's not that I'm hostile to those two children, it's the fault of their parents. They shouldn't have gotten married. Forget it. I don't want to talk about these troubles today. I'll allow them to stay for a few days here, and then I'll give them several million yuan to save their lives. I'll show the other families that we're kind. Rong Yong was unhappy after hearing Wang Saibai's words. Wang Saibai was famous for her tart and mean style in the family, and she was a utilitarian woman, but luckily, it was Rong Zhenxing who was in charge of the family affairs. They just came here on holiday, not to ask for help or anything. Rong Yong frowned slightly and replied, "Besides, they are wealthy enough." "Are you joking? Zhang Han is a general and Xian is a famous star. Are they poor?" Rong Yong's voice was a little louder, which was heard by other people at Rong Zhenxing's the dining table. All the people in his branch looked up to see Rong Yong. They were all confused. "What is the section chief saying? Ouch!" Wang Saibai sneered and said, "Yong, I'm a kind-hearted person. Even if you don't accept it, how can you be angry with me? Is it polite to treat me as a bad guy?" All our fifth uncle's family members care about their authority and are stubborn. Now Rong Jiali's children are coming. I heard that they were all driven out of the Zhang family more than 2 years ago. How could they not lack money? Yong, don't delay others because of your personal reasons. Maybe they need lots of money to save their lives. Ha ha. Rong Yong couldn't help snorting. You'd better not be so arrogant. It's not difficult to admit the happiness of others. Besides, stop. Rong Zhenxing frowned and said, they are Jiali's children and it's proper for them to come here. Their happiness is their own business and we needn't care about them. That's it. Hearing Rong Zhenxing's words, Wang Saibai ended her speech with a smile. Rong Yong shook his fist and said, I'll go out and show them in. Then he turned and left. As soon as he walked 2 steps, there were several voices coming from the table at the back. It's not a problem to give them some money since they come to us for help. Even I can give them a job in my company. In fact, they are miserable. Their ability is limited. After hearing those comments, Rong Yong still remained calm, but he was actually very angry. As an officer, he didn't like to release all the information in advance. If Rong Sheng was there, he would argue with those guys. What are you talking about? He is a general. Wang Ming and Wang Ya, who were sitting on the other side, were more serious than before. Ignorance, Wang Ming said softly. They are still a little too snobbish. There was a trace of disappointment in Wang Ya's eyes. She had heard from her mother that the older generation of the family used to be very close to each other, but as they grew older, the people of all branches gradually moved away. Since their family came back, there were not many people greeting them. As for Rong Chenjiang, the third master of the Rong family who was doing a close-door cultivation as he prepared for the Grand Master middle stage, he came out at 11 o'clock with all the martial artists in the family to greet the other family members. Then he went back to cultivate, since he planned to make a breakthrough that night. Wang Ming had intended to tell the third uncle that Han was Zhang Han Yang, and perhaps Han could offer some help when Rong Chenjiang was making the breakthrough. However, Wang Ming had just returned and heard from Rong Sheng that Rong Chenjiang had just left. Rong Chenjiang had been preparing for the breakthrough for a long time. Right then, Rong Yong walked to the door and saw a group of people several meters away. He saw Zhang Han and his family, Rong Sheng and Jia Wei, as well as Zhang Li and Zif. Xian had just left the spring festival party, and she had not removed her makeup. Her long hair was carefully designed by the hairdresser, which looked natural but was very delicate. Meng was always beautiful. She held Zhang Han and Xian's hands, looking at the restaurant with large windows curiously. There are so many people here, Meng exclaimed. As soon as she finished, she saw Rong Yong coming out of the restaurant door. Dad. Rong Han walked towards him calmly and smiled. After a day's contact, Zhang Han and the others found Rong Han very calm in front of her father. As long as Rong Yong was not with them, the girl would be more active and livelier. Yes. Rong Yong nodded. Rong Sheng asked with a smile, Brother, did you tell the patriarch about it? What should I tell them? Rong Yong asked. Something about General Zhang. Rong Sheng was confused. Didn't you tell them about it? Wang Yong's mouth slightly quivered. No, they seemed to have misunderstood Han's intention. Let's ignore them and celebrate the new year by ourselves. The family has changed since uncle died. Rongji aches inside. Then he smiled as he looked at Zhang Han and Xian. He said, second brother is right, we are here to visit the first brother and the second brother. If they don't want to see us, we can enjoy the spring festival in our own way. Zhang Han and Xian looked at each other but said nothing. They went in with Rongsheng. Not many people had paid attention to the conversation between Rong Yong and Wang Saibai. Everyone chatted with each other, and many people who drank were talking a little louder, which made the restaurant livelier. What? Suddenly, a red-faced middle-aged man looked at the door and exclaimed. Then he turned his gaze to the TV in front of him, which was playing the New Year's program of Lin Hai TV station. Then his eyes went back to the direction of the door. His face changed. I can't dream anymore, I must be dreaming. It's strange for people to come out from the TV. No, why am I hallucinating? Are we drinking bad wine? The man next to him shook his head and said, no, it's a real person, it's Xian. Oh, my God, she came to our house. The eyes of a 20-year-old woman were wide open. This is big news, for Xian to come to our house for the new year. Wow, I'm afraid that all my friends will envy me. Why is she holding a child's hand? Why, that kid is so beautiful. Who is the man next to her? How can he? With the arrival of Zhang Han and Xian, gradually, the attention of all the people in the restaurant was focused on them. Exclamations came out from time to time. Xian, she is here in flesh. Many people were shocked. Many young men and women who liked Xian could not help but stand up and stare at her. Well, Happy New Year, everyone. Meng found so many people looking at them, so she waved at them, and then held Xian's hand again. Xian didn't wear sunglasses. She looked at them, smiled and nodded politely. Zhang Han looked at the crowd and said nothing. His expression was very calm. Rongsheng and Jia Wei kept smiling and nodding. After they sat down, a man with a flat-top haircut next to him grinned and asked, oh my God, Dad, how did you manage to bring the superstar here? Stinky boy, that is you, your cousin Zhang Han. Xian is Zhang Han's wife, and Meng is their daughter. Han and Li, he is my son, Rong Nan. Rongsheng said, feeling a little ashamed. Zhang Han was a general and Rongsheng didn't dare to regard him as one of the younger generation. Well, nice to meet you. Brother and sister, hello, Meng. Rong Nan hurried to greet them. Nice to meet you. They greeted each other. The other people present were very confused at the moment. What's going on? Xian is Zhang Han's wife, and that girl is their daughter? Wang Saibai felt uncomfortable after seeing this. She had just said something unpleasant and she was proven wrong. Xian was Zhang Han's wife and they obviously didn't lack money. It was so easy for Xian to make a fortune. She felt unhappy as she saw Rongsheng and Rong Yong talking freely and happily. Currying favor by claptrap, Wang Saibai whispered. She was not satisfied because Rongsheng didn't take Zhang Han to greet her. The patriarch is still sitting here. Are you so arrogant? In fact, if she hadn't just satirized Rong Yong, Rongsheng might have introduced Zhang Han to them. In fact, the rest of the people at their dinner table had almost finished their dinner and some of them had planned to leave the restaurant, but they decided to stay when they saw Xian, so they could watch them have dinner. About 5 minutes later, several plates of hot dumplings were placed on Rongsheng's table. Many people thought it was strange for them to have dumplings. This was because every region had different New Year's Eve customs. In other words, people in the north would find it odd if they saw someone eating rice cakes beside for New Year's. Suddenly, at Rong Zhenxing's table, a 7 or 8-year-old boy said with some expectation, I want to eat dumplings, too. Hearing him, Wang Saibai couldn't help patting the table. What do you want to eat? Aren't you full? Swish. The whole restaurant suddenly quieted down. Everyone turned their gazes to Wang Saibai in astonishment. The patriarch's wife is annoyed because the newcomers didn't greet her, just as they expected. At that time, Wang Saibai seemed to have found an opportunity to vent. She looked at the little boy and said, "Weixi, you've just had enough. Didn't you say you were going to sleep? Then you can go back to have a rest. Go to bed early, and wake up early tomorrow to go to visit your grandfather with your father. You should remember that when you go to other people's houses, you should first greet them warmly. This is a courtesy and a rule. If you don't understand this, you'll make yourself a joke." Hiss. Many people's faces changed when they heard this. Obviously, she was warning those people at Rongsheng's table. Chapter 584, Unhappy. Swish. Everyone turned their gazes to Rongyong's table. She said it in front of everyone, which might embarrass those family members in Rongsheng's branch. But they couldn't stop it, for it was Wang Saibai, the patriarch's wife, who was scolding others. She had authority over them, and the other side was the branch of Rongsheng and the sixth master, which was relatively too down to earth, even far away from the core of the family. If the other side was Rongfan, a major who was the second master's branch, or Rongjin, a rich businessman who was the third lord's branch, would she speak that way? Obviously, she couldn't do the same thing in that case. However, Rongsheng's strength was poor, and he dared to debate with Wang Saibai in such a public place, which was beyond her control. In fact, other people on the scene did not sympathize with Rongsheng, and even thought that they should be reprimanded. Even Rongzheng, the patriarch, was silent and didn't spare a glance at Rongsheng, which showed his attitude. After the shock just then, everyone was curious about the arrival of Xian instead of being shocked. They were all waiting for something important to happen. A few people whispered, "Why didn't they inform the patriarch in advance that they would bring someone? No wonder they are being scolded." Yes, it's their fault, but I'm not concerned about it now. I wonder who that lovely girl besides Xian is. Under everyone's gaze, Rongsheng's face changed slightly. Xian's chopsticks stopped, and Zhang Han took an indifferent look at Wang Saibai. Rongsheng laid down his chopsticks directly and looked at Wang Saibai with anger. Rongsheng looked at Meng Meng and said, "Come on, Meng Meng should eat more dumplings. These dumplings are really delicious. I especially order them for you, and I never invite others to eat it." "Thank you, Grandpa." Meng Meng said thanks as she slowly ate the dumplings. "Ha ha, what a lovely girl." Jia Wei smiled, then looked at Zhang Han and Xian to say, "Han and Yan, you should eat more, too." "Okay, thank you." Xian replied with a smile. Her smile stunned many people present. Wang Saibai was even more dissatisfied. She snorted and slapped her chopsticks on the table. The bang made the restaurant more quiet. Sheng and Yong. Wang Saibai gave them a meaningful smile. "You brought them home for the new year, and as their elders, how could you not obey the rules? We are still sitting here. If you look down on us, you can go back to your room for dinner instead of staying here." "Jia Wei, you are Yong's wife. Why don't you care about him? Besides, this time," without waiting for her to continue, Rong Jiaxin could not help standing up, frowning and saying, "Wang Saibai, stop talking like that. What authority do you have? If you want to say something, just say it. If you can't, just shut up. If you keep telling nonsense, don't blame me for being rude." Bang! The whole restaurant fell into silence. Those who were not familiar with Rong Jiaxin were very surprised. Why is she not afraid of Wang Saibai at all? Wang Saibai's face was red with anger. She was so furious that she jumped up from her seat. When she was about to say something, Rongzheng, the patriarch, said, "That's enough. The New Year's Eve dinner is almost over. If you want to go back to have a rest, just do it. The annual meeting tomorrow is what all of you should consider." Hearing Rongzheng's words, Wang Saibai stopped talking. Although she was still angry, she no longer looked at Rong Jiaxin. Wang Saibai knew that the family members of Rong Jiaxin's husband were all powerful and influential. both in business circles and martial arts circles, so she dared not to provoke her, not to mention that Wang Ming was sitting near Rong Jiaxin. Rong Chenjiang often praised the Wang family when he heard that Wang Ming had advanced to the stage of martial arts Grand Master, and Rong Jiaxin had advanced to the stage of Heaven Stage Master. So even if she was dissatisfied, she could only close her mouth when faced with Rong Jiaxin. Rong Zhenxing's younger brother, Rong Zhenmao, a traffic chief, also said, "It's New Year's Day today, don't worry too much about etiquette, sister-in-law. My brother is right, what matters now is tomorrow's annual meeting." "Yes, Mom." At this time, Rong Zhenxing's son also looked at Wang Saibai and said, "Be happy, if you are serious, you will lose the game, don't pay attention to the unimportant things." Wang Saibai stood up and said with a cold snort, "You're right, the New Year's Eve dinner is over, I'll go back to apply a mask. Let's go." Rong Zhenxing, the patriarch, also stood up. Around them, some of the elders stood up to leave. Rong Fan, the major of the second master's branch, and Rong Jin, the rich businessman of the third master's branch, all got up and left. Almost 80% of the elders went back to their own small family to celebrate the new year. There were a large number of young people, about 20, who didn't want to stand up at all and said, "I haven't had enough." The group walked out of the restaurant while talking. When they left, they all looked at Zhang Han's side. In fact, those elders were also curious about Xian. After all, she was a big star, and the little child seemed to be her and Zhang Han's child, but they didn't know the specific situation. But they didn't dare to ask about it because they might provoke Wang Saibai. After all, she could persuade the patriarch since she was his wife. Therefore, no one went to greet Zhang Han, Zhang Li and Xian. That kind of atmosphere also made Meng Meng feel strange. Although she didn't know what had happened, she knew that their family didn't seem to be welcomed. Meng Meng looked up at Zhang Han and asked in a low voice, "Papa, they dislike us, right?" Zhang Han's face changed slightly, and he pondered for 2 seconds. He calmly looked at the direction of Wang Saibai and then turned his gaze to Meng Meng. With a soft expression, he reached out to touch her little head and said, "Perhaps, Dad told you that not all people would like us. What should we do to those people?" Meng Meng thought about it, and then said with a little grievance, "I don't know, why don't they like us? No matter what the reason is, we just don't care about their ideas, because their ideas are worthless," Zhang Han replied. Zhang Han's acting style was to protect and care about the people he should protect and care about, not just to be a good person, and he never thought he was a good person. In such a large cultivation world, no one could be called a good person. Everyone had their definitions of what was good or bad. Zhang Han also had a standard and was teaching his own rules to Meng Meng step by step. After hearing those words, Xian pursed her lips but said nothing. After contacting the martial arts world, Xian's views on education had also changed. "Hey, whatever they do, let's just enjoy the dishes," said Zhang Li with a snort. "Yes, why should we cause trouble during the spring festival?" Wang echoed. Although her first marriage was not perfect, after living in the Wang family, she felt that all people were peaceful and friendly. In fact, I wanted to tell them Han's identity just now, but at that time, Wang Saibai's attitude was not very good. I didn't think it was necessary to tell the truth to her. When I become a director, I will speak with facts. Rong Yong shook his head. "What's the matter? Just say it and scare them to death," Rong Sheng said more broadly. He didn't care about anyone's attitude. All right, all right." Rong Jiaxin reluctantly shook her head and said, "Stop saying say that, let's enjoy the dishes and go out to see the fireworks after dinner." Fireworks. Meng Meng's eyes were lit up with interest. She remembered that in her Xanadu, fireworks were very, very beautiful. "Yes, there will be some fireworks in our house later," Rong Sheng said with a smile. "Papa, Mama, I'm full." Meng Meng laid down her chopsticks after hearing those words. How can Meng Meng eat so little? You have to eat more now because you're growing up, said Jia Wei with a smile. I can't eat too much at night, I'll get fat, said Meng Meng seriously. Everyone at the table was amused. With such a cute girl present, the atmosphere would always be active. Chapter 585. The Annual Meeting. Meng Meng didn't seem to eat much, but in fact she was full. There were nearly 20 dishes here, and she took a bite of each dish as well as several dumplings. While it didn't matter whether Zhang Han ate more or less, Xian ate less at night. The family of three sat on the dining table and chatted with the others. With the company of Meng Meng, the cute little girl, the atmosphere in the area soon became relaxed and active. The eyes of the others were lit up. They obviously intended to go there to inquire about the newcomers, but they didn't dare to do so. Therefore, they sat on one side and watched Xian while drinking or eating fruits. After chatting for a while, Zhang Han saw that everyone had almost finished. Then he checked the time and said, "It's nearly 11:30. Let's go out to see if there are any fireworks. Then we'll go back to the room to have some rest. Meng Meng is sleepy." Zhang Han had been paying attention to Meng Meng, who had yawned 2 times just then. Meng Meng usually went to bed at around 10 o'clock in the evening, and at the latest before 11 o'clock. She was dazed and exhausted, since it was nearly 11:30 in the evening, and she had been playing all day. Hearing Papa's words, Meng Meng nodded and replied seriously, "Well, why hasn't the fireworks show started?" Everyone present was amused by her. All of a sudden, whoosh, bang, a sound of fireworks rang out, and they saw the colorful lights lighting up the night sky. Meng Meng was cheered up. She turned to look at Zhang Han. "Wow, here we go, Papa, I want to see." "Okay, let's go and enjoy the fireworks." Zhang Han gently touched Meng Meng's pink face, stood up to carry her in his arms. Then he walked to the door of the restaurant. "Mama, hurry up!" Meng Meng shouted to Xian, who was grabbing her handbag. "I'm coming." Xian quickly picked up her handbag and got up to follow them. Rong Sheng, Rong Yong, Zhang Li and Zif also stood up. The New Year's dinner was over, and they all went out to watch the fireworks. This scene made more than a dozen young men and women a little dizzy. Many of them looked at each other. "Did you hear what that lovely girl just said?" "Yes, she called her mama. Damn it, how amazing the news is. Xian has a daughter. She has a husband. It's amazing that the goddess husband is related to our family. I feel as if I have found a scandalous secret. They're out. Why don't we go and have a look?" "Let's go, hurry up." After Zhang Han and the others walked out of the restaurant, those young men and women at the restaurant suddenly couldn't help but stand up and run to the door one after another. They followed Zhang Han. He was walking toward the small square inches front of the restaurant. At that time, fireworks were blooming in the sky. Meng Meng looked at them and felt confused. "It's strange." "What's strange?" asked Zhang Han. "How can the fireworks here be so small? They're not as big as Papa's for Mama or Papa's for Meng Meng. They're too small," said Meng Meng, pouting. "Well." Zhang Han didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He had prepared those fireworks for Xian for a long time, which were large. They had illuminated the whole New Moon Bay. Even people in the Zikeng district could see them clearly. Those fireworks blooming above Mount New Moon were also magic fireworks, and Zhang Han used some magic skills to fill the whole sky with them. Of course, the 2 fireworks shows were many times more beautiful than the small-scale fireworks prepared by the Wrong family. But it was better than nothing. The fireworks that corresponded to those from other places in the night sky, rendering the happy atmosphere of the new year. After a few minutes, at the end of the fireworks show, uncle, aunt, a 17 or 18-year-old chubby boy ran to them and said hello with a smile. Then he looked at Meng Meng and said, "She's so cute, I can't even move my eyes away from her." Of course. Do you know who gave birth to her? Rong Han was familiar with the boy, so he joked, "Uncle, is this elder brother the son of Aunt Jiali?" the boy asked curiously. Yes, he is Zhang Han and you can call him brother. Rongsheng nodded. Nice to meet you, brother Zhang Han and sister Ziyan. Wow, you both are good looking, and your daughter is pretty, too. What a perfect family, perfect. The boy smiled while scratching his head. He looked silly and naive, which made Ziyan and Zhang Li chuckle. Boy, do you have anything to do here? Asked Rongsheng. Ha ha, uncle, you are clever. I want a CD and a photo with Sister Ziyan's signature on them, and it would be better if she could sign my t-shirt. By the way, can I take a picture with her? The boy looked at them expectantly. I also want this, a weak voice came from the side. It was a 16-year-old girl, a little shy. Me too. Clatter. All of a sudden, a dozen young men and women surrounded them. What are you doing? You can't take my mama away. Meng was a little confused and waved her small hand to refuse them. They're not trying to take me away, Ziyan replied with a smile. She looked at the people in front of her and said, I didn't make any preparations. Would tomorrow be okay? I'll prepare some signed CDs in advance. Okay, thank you, Sister Ziyan. The chubby boy was overjoyed. The arrival of the group of young people made Ziyan and Zhang Li feel much better. It seemed that they were very popular among the young generation of the Wang family, although the attitude of the patriarch and his followers was a little disgusting. After another 2 minutes, Zhang Han looked at Meng and said, My daughter is sleepy. Let's head back to get some sleep. Meng nestled in Zhang Han's arms, leaned on his shoulder and mumbled, I want to listen to Papa's story. Rongsheng guided Zhang Han and his family back to their residence. The conditions there were not so satisfying and there wasn't a single villa for Zhang Han's family of 3, so they lived on the 2nd floor, while Rong Jiaxin's family stayed downstairs. Meng wanted to hear the story, but she fell asleep on the way back. Back in the bedroom, Zhang Han gently laid Meng beside him, then he hugged Ziyan and fell asleep. It was a quiet night. The next morning, they had breakfast at Rongsheng's villa once they got ready. After breakfast, Rongsheng hesitated and said, at 10 o'clock later. The annual meeting of the Wang family will begin. There are a few members in our branch and only a few people came to support us. Would you like to attend the meeting with us, now that you are back this spring festival? Our branch has not prospered for a long time, Rongyong echoed and sighed. Okay, we'll go with you, Wang Ming replied. Wang Ming was willing to help Rong Jiaxin's relatives. After a little discussion, they decided to attend the annual meeting together. Once it was 9:50 in the morning, Ziyan and Zuf put on sunglasses before they went out. Many strangers would surely be there, and they didn't want to be recognized. Besides, they had decided to sit in the back row, and even if they were recognized, they wouldn't encounter great trouble, because some rich businessmen and powerful families would not be surprised if they saw superstars. They even had prejudice against them. The Wang family's residential area was neither too large nor too small. The villa on Rongsheng's side was to the right. After walking out of the villa along the cement road toward the center, they crossed several flower beds along the way, tens of meters away from the front of the old house. There was a villa built in the period of the Republic of China, characterized by a very large hall and a relatively wide gate. There was a small square on both sides of the gate, with many tables and chairs set up. They were for the rest of the family's younger generation and their collateral children, as well as those who would visit the Wang family later. At that time, there were more than 20 people sitting there, chatting in groups. After seeing Zhang Han and the others arrive, the crowd turned their gazes at them, showing a kind smile and waving hello at them. There were a few people with unfriendly expressions who shook their heads. They were Wang Saibai's followers. Zhang Han and his friends entered the hall while everyone looked at them. Inside, there were 5 rows of small sofas, centered on the doorway, extending inward in a fan shape. In centermost position, Rong Zhenxing, Wang Saibai, Rong Zhenmao and about 7 strangers were sitting there. There were several vacancies at the back. Sitting on the left and right sides were Rong Fan, a major, Rong Jin, a wealthy businessman, and all their close friends and followers. Obviously, the seats were also ranked according to a certain strength level. Rong Sheng was used to this, so he took the lead to sit at the back row without hesitation. Their arrival made Wang Saibai feel uncomfortable, because she still remembered what had happened the night before. Next to Rong Sheng's area, there were family members of the 5th Master's branch, who had the same strength as the branch of the 6th Master, not at the core level. A few minutes later, when it was 10 o'clock in the morning, the other family members arrived one after another. Meng was quite curious about all this. What is an annual meeting? She didn't understand, so she sat behind with Xian and Zhang Han and whispered to them, "It's time for this year's annual meeting to begin." Rong Zhenxing looked at his watch, and at 10 o'clock he said, "Let's make a summary within the family first." Then he looked at Wang Saibai and others followed him. Wang Saibai took out a document and read it out loud. "Let me start with last year's performance. First of all, under Zhenxing's leadership, the overall performance of the family group is 30% higher than the previous year, and the net profit is 57% higher than the results of the previous year. That is to say, the dividend you'll get tomorrow will be 50% higher than what you made last year." Her words made many people smile. As the director of transportation, Zhen Mao has brought 39 personal connections to his family in 1 year, which is an intangible and important investment. Then Rong Fan, as a major, he also brought a lot of benefits to the family. With the help of his identity, we have signed 7 contracts, 5 of which are business with the military, which is worth encouraging. Rong Jin's company is getting larger, its net profit is 190% more than the previous year, and he has signed 19 cooperation contracts for family businesses, with a profit of 400 million yuan. He has made a great contribution to the family, which is obvious to all. Besides, apart from the key personnel, everyone else nominated by Wang Saibai was smiling proudly. This showed that they had been recognized by the family, and they might be able to make great progress in the future. When someone was happy, of course, someone was worried. At the end of Wang Saibai's speech, all the 6 members in the branch of the 5th Master were a little depressed. They weren't praised, so they felt that the annual meeting had nothing to do with them. But what they didn't expect was that after announcing the list of commendations, Wang Saibai changed her face and looked at Rong Sheng. "Now I'm going to talk about those who are holding back the family," she said. Chapter 586, Disbelief. Some people present were cheered up after hearing Wang Saibai's words. In fact, they felt that sometimes they weren't very interested in the praised members, and the criticized ones would make them feel better. They would be greatly satisfied when those poor guys were extremely embarrassed, ashamed and angry. First of all, there may be some achievements in the 5th uncle's branch, but in the whole year your performance was not appropriate. For example, Rong Wu's son caused several problems during the year. I remember that he once hurt the child of Director Liao of the Western District, and spent a lot of money to deal with this matter. As for the other troubles, I will mention them one by one, but you all know what you have done. Those who didn't work hard shall behave this year. If you keep acting like this, some of your positions will be changed. Her words were not serious, but the faces of some members from the 5th Master's branch were contorted. They looked helpless, ashamed or even pale. Will their position be changed? Are we going to be demoted? They couldn't refute Wang Saibai's words. After all, what she said was the truth, but her bad intentions made them angry. Seeing their depressed expression, Wang Saibai snorted to herself, then turned her gaze to the right side, where Rong Sheng was. I'd like to stress the performance of the 6th uncle's branch in particular. Wang Saibai looked at them ironically. Did you embarrass me yesterday? Although I endured it yesterday, I can get even with you today. Her voice was calm, but her words were very sharp. From the beginning, 6th uncle was a little cowardly. I remember that he has 2 sons and 2 daughters. Rong Sheng is the eldest, Rong Yong is the second, Rong Jiali is the third and Rong Jiexan is the fourth. Wangzhang is a reliable person and I appreciate that he has always been in line with the rules, not making any mistakes, but your son Rongnan is a bit disappointing, who doesn't make much contribution to his family. He often goes to the nightclubs, sometimes drives cars and causes trouble. I don't know how you teach him. Children's wrong words and deeds are the fault of their parents. Wangzhang, you should reflect on yourself. As for Rongyong, you have achieved nothing. You could have been promoted to Deputy Director General the year before, but what did you do? You are so arrogant that you always execute your own plans without consulting the Patriarch. What's the result? Didn't you lose the position of Deputy Director? It's so ridiculous that you are just a normal staff member in your department, and I don't know when that is going to end. I don't want to talk about the 6th Uncle's branch anymore, but I want to make everything clear. Do you remember Rong Jiali, who insisted on marrying that man in Shangjing, despite her family's opposition? Did you see her end? Shut up. A cold voice interrupted her and rang through the hall. Swish, swish, swish. Everyone looked back and saw Zhang Han turning his head to look at Wang Saibai. His expression and eyes were very calm, but they could tell from his tone that he was dissatisfied. Just as they expected. Under everyone's eyes, including Wang Saibai, who had slightly changed her face, Zhang Han continued, as a big family, you allow such an ignorant woman to preside over the annual meeting. Does it mean that your patriarch is too incompetent? What? A lot of people were staring at the scene. Before that, Wang Saibai's criticism on the members of the 5th Master's branch was not too harsh, and they could bear it. After all, the decision-making power of the family was in the hands of Wang Saibai and her husband. They couldn't defend themselves, or that might even have the opposite effect. When Rongsheng was criticized, he wanted to refute immediately, but Wang Saibai spoke quicker than him. While Rongsheng was still organizing his speech, Zhang Han began to speak. Rongyong had always been more stable, like a knowledgeable old dog. Although he was very dissatisfied, he intended to wait for Wang Saibai to finish, and then he would retort. But they didn't expect that Zhang Han would scold Wang Saibai so mercilessly. They didn't expect it. But Wang Ming and Rong Jiaxin did. If you hadn't mentioned Jiali, Han would have forgiven you however murderous your heart was. Wang Ming laughed in silence. Meng beside Zhang Han also felt the change in the atmosphere. As a clever little girl, she closed her mouth at this time and looked around with her clear big eyes. Xian licked her red lips and kept silent. She didn't want to say anything. Ha! Zhang Li sneered at Wang Saibai. Swish. Wang Saibai blushed with anger. There was a clear change in the faces of Rong Zhenxing, the patriarch of the family sitting beside her, and his brother Rong Zhenmao. Yesterday you dared to contradict me, and I forgave you. Why do you still do this at the annual family meeting today? Do you think we dare not drive you out? You really have no self-awareness. As for the others, such as Rong Fan, the major of the 2nd Master's branch, and Rong Jin, the businessman of the 3rd Master's branch, all looked at Zhang Han with interest. This young man, who remained silent before, is really interesting. They didn't expect him to scold Wang Saibai. Indeed, just like a Shangjing young master's character, it's a pity that they are in the wrong family of Lin Hai, where he can't be so arrogant. Apart from them, the others were even more surprised and confused. But many of them were secretly happy to see Wang Saibai being reprimanded. But they knew that as the wife of the patriarch, Wang Saibai had great power. Her counterattack would be very swift, and perhaps those people would be driven out by her. So everyone's focus was gradually directed at Wang Saibai. She suddenly stood up and stared at Zhang Han, angrily saying, "What did you say? Aren't you too presumptuous? You are too presumptuous." Rong Jiaxin raised her eyebrows and stood up. She said seriously, "As long as you preside the annual meeting, we will only come here to accompany eldest brother and second brother. Our arrival has nothing to do with you, let alone our business. Besides, Han has been tolerating you, and if it weren't for your kinship status, I'm afraid you would have been killed by him. Don't be too ignorant, you are only challenging his patience. It's no exaggeration to say that even the third master has to be respectful to Han if they met. Do you understand? What do I understand? Ha ha. At this time, Wang Saibai's mind was also filled with anger. Regardless of fearing Rong Jiaxin, she said with a sneer, I want to say that if you don't want to stay here, or if you think I'm not qualified to serve you, you can leave now. No one wants you to stay here. At this time, Rong Zhenxing stood up, looked at Rong Sheng and said slowly, Saibai is right. Although she may be a little impolite, I do feel that you are even more impolite. Patriarch, that's her own problem. Rong Yong stood up and replied, our branch does make contributions to the family. First, I'm going to be a director at the Yilin office. Last year, we stayed in the right place and didn't make any mistakes or cause many troubles to our family. Even if there were some troubles, wouldn't my position as a director be enough? It's normal that there are more members and more contributions in large branches. Although there are fewer members in my branch, I'm going to be a director with great power. Isn't that enough? Yilin is a region known as the Rich People's Area, next to a development zone. The Yilin office, or the Yilin administration, was mainly in charge of the development of land by large enterprises, and it had the authority of supervision and allocation of land resources. It could be said that Rong Yong was going to master the lifeblood of many rich businessmen. This position gave him the same power as Rong Zhenmao. However, ridiculous. Wang Saibai laughed and said, you are the director of Yilin? Are you joking, Rong Yong? Why do you have even more problems now? I just talked with Director Ma on the phone the day before yesterday, and he is fine. Are you cursing him? Don't do something stupid. Director Rong Zhenmao raised his eyebrows and said in a deep voice, especially Rong Yong, you are still in the system and should be careful about your words. Fortunately, you said it to your own family, not in public, otherwise you would be blamed for your words. Swish. Rong Yong's face darkened. How could I joke with this? He is telling the truth. Rong Sheng stood up and echoed, my brother will be promoted to the post of director, which was promised by Secretary Liu. It can't be false. Stop. Rong Zhenmao's face slightly changed as he couldn't stand by anymore. Stop playing jokes with Secretary Liu. It's the last time I warn you. How can this be a joke? Rong Sheng bit his teeth and said, do you know why Secretary Liu met us in person? It was because of Han. I can tell you that he is a general. Do you understand? Clatter. His words were like a tossed stone that raised 1,000 ripples. But why would their gazes be a little strange? Rong Zhenmao covered his forehead with his hand and said helplessly, okay, just say whatever you like, someone is coming here, and if you dare to say that again, I won't forgive you. Ha ha. Wang Saibai sneered. When the woman was about to make a comment, Rong Fan shook his head and said, well, stop it, everyone, it's 11:25 and the guests are coming. Let's stop talking nonsense. Sister Wang, although you are a bit impatient, you are actually helping the wrong family and we all understand it. Now you'd better calm down. As for Sheng and Yong, you should also understand her. Although Sister Wang's words were a little impolite, she is a kind woman and you can't take it too seriously. What I said is true. Rong Sheng explained anxiously. His expression surprised many people. Really? Such a young general? It's impossible. No one believed it, especially Rong Fan, who clearly knew what the word general implied. All right, all right. Rong Fan's tone was gentle, which calmed down the crowd. Let's stop talking about it. Happy New Year, everyone. Don't worry about the other business too much. The guests are coming, and maybe we can talk about their matter at the end of the annual meeting. HMPH. Wang Saibai snorted, then turned her head to stop arguing with Rong Sheng. Rong Zhenxing, the patriarch of the family, also frowned at Rong Sheng. After turning around, he shook his head slightly. It could be seen from his expression that he didn't like Rong Sheng and his branch at all. Chapter 587, Not a General? You don't believe it? Rongsheng, who was more forthright, couldn't stand it. When he was about to say something angrily, Jia Wei hurriedly grabbed his arm and whispered, "Don't be so reckless." At this time, it might annoy the majority if he continued to argue. Why? Rongsheng looked at Jia Wei in confusion. Elder brother, sit down first. They will finally know that truth, and it's not necessary for us to argue with them. Let's wait and see their reaction, Rongyong whispered. He was calm as always, and he knew that as soon as he was promoted to the post of director at the Yilin office, he would. Han Rongjiexin, who was sitting in the back, turned around to look at Zhang Han and said, "You don't want to bother yourself arguing with the likes of him." Yes, they don't believe me, only because they are short-sighted, but they haven't even heard of you, which shows that their strength is very low, otherwise, they would have known all about you already. Wang Ming shook his head slightly. Yes, perhaps the third master has heard about it, but none of them came out to attend the meeting. I don't know what they are busy with. At least there should be an insider coming to attend the meeting, Rongjiexin complained. Nothing serious. Seeing this, Zhang Han smiled faintly and said, "They are busy making a breakthrough in the backyard. When he comes out, the third master of Rong family will very likely reach the Grand Master middle stage, but in terms of strength, he's still inferior to Han, and still has to be very respectful to him. They will soon be astonished by him." Eh? Why do you look so happy? Did you see all this as a comedy? Rongjiexin reached to Wang Ming's waist and attacked him repeatedly. Meng, who kept looking around, turned her gaze at Xian and whispered, "Mama, they don't like us." Xian shook her head slightly. "No, they just discussed something." HMPH. Meng turned around unhappily. Meng's immature complaint was different from those of adults, which made the listeners enjoy it. Even Wang Ming and Rongjiexin were amused by her. Meng pursed her lips, took Zhang Han's hand in her right hand and mumbled, "Then we will ignore them. Papa has said that if other people don't like us, we can ignore them. We will play by ourselves without them." Meng was really good at adjusting the atmosphere. Rongjiexin, Wang Ming, Wang Yi and Zhang Li, who were annoyed, all wore smiles after her comment. They all focused on amusing Meng and stopped paying attention to the annual meeting. So they began to chat, and soon it was 10:35 in the morning. Everyone was talking in a low voice, and they were guessing which branch's powerful friends would arrive first. During this period, Wang Saibai had also calmed down and chatted with core family members such as Rong Jin. Suddenly, a man in a suit with a black diary standing at the door said in a loud voice, "Chairman Fan of the Lifing Financial Company is here." Hearing his words, people in the hall began to discuss. The Lifing Financial Company, I didn't expect the first one to show up to be so powerful. Chairman Fan is very powerful. At the age of 36, he is worth 1.3 billion yuan, which is amazing. More than a minute later, 3 people entered the hall. The man in charge was well dressed and clean, just like a successful man would. A 36-year-old businessman worth more than 1 billion yuan was very successful in the eyes of most people. He should be second uncle's friend, right? Rong Han whispered. As long as there were some powerful businessmen present, they were either friends of Rong Zhenxing or Rong Jin. Only a few of them were friends of others. Just as they expected, Rong Jin stood up with a smile and walked a few steps to shake hands with the visitor. "Fan, it's a great honor for you to come here in person from such a far place." Brother Jin, it's your family's annual meeting today. How could I not be present in person for such a big event? I just want to wish you a happy new year. Our cooperation has just begun, and I hope I can come to your annual meeting every year in the future. Chairman Fan laughed. "Of course, don't be so courteous, Chairman Fan, sit down please." Rong Jin personally welcomed Chairman Fan and his men to their seats. During this period, Chairman Fan warmly greeted Rong Zhenxing and his followers. "Long time no see, Patriarch Rong, Chief Rong, Major Wang and everyone, Happy New Year. It's a pleasure to have you. Sit down please. Wang Zhenxing nodded and smiled. Fan Hui, such a supporter with financial resources, was certainly a distinguished guest of the Wang family's annual meeting. After they sat down, the two men following Chairman Fan greeted the people around them one after another. Then Wang Saibai and Wang Zhenxing talked with them. Since they came here because of Wang Jin, they were mainly accompanied by him. After Chairman Fan sat down, a stream of guests came to wish the Wang family a Happy New Year. Chairman Jiang of Suzhou Rong'an Technology Co., Limited is here. Wang Jindong of the Wang family in the Western District is here. Chairman Xu of Fengge Machinery, Section Chief Liu of the Yilan Bureau. Rong Yong's colleague came in and went straight to the host seat and said with enthusiasm, Patriarch Rong and Chief Rong, Happy New Year. Thank you. Wang Zhenxing nodded with a smile. Wang Saibai snorted. Section Chief Liu didn't find anything strange. His position here was very low and he had little influence. He was even a little jittery upon seeing the celebrities sitting behind Patriarch Rong. Finally, he approached Rong Yong. He looked at the area where he had been arranged to sit. Why, Yong, why are you the only one here? Didn't you invite someone else? Rong Yong's face froze. Liu realized that he had made a mistake when he saw Rong Yong's expression. He blushed and smiled awkwardly. Perhaps he was the only one Rong Yong had invited. Fortunately, 3 or 5 more people came to them one after another, and Liu didn't feel lonely after that. All the visitors were surprised to see Xian present, but they didn't remember her name. She looks familiar. Where have I met her? On this occasion, it was inconvenient for them to go to and subtly inquire about her. As for those people in the small square outside, including the collateral children and some immediate family members, they were sitting on both sides, looking in through the window and discussing. Wow! The Patriarch has made many new friends in recent years. It's wonderful that they can get along well with so many celebrities. Look at the back, and you'll find there are few people around Uncle Rongsheng. This involves social relations, which everyone needs. As the saying goes, it's easy to walk with more friends. In a word, the annual meeting of the Wang family was still very lively. During the chat, some cooperation plans were reached between guests and hosts, which left everyone very satisfied. The quiet area on the edge of the hall, where Rongsheng was located, was also very busy at the moment. Zhang Han, Xian, Rong Jiaxin and Zhang Li were all around Meng Meng. They had brought her toys and snacks from time to time, creating a very leisurely environment. It was 12:20 p.m. Whoosh! A middle-aged man who was about 40 years old came in rushing through the door. Judging from his chi, Zhang Han knew that he was a martial artist of the Wang family, an earth stage master. He walked quickly toward Wang Zhenxing, the Patriarch. Wang Zhenxing stood up to welcome him. This scene attracted many people's attention. The middle-aged man leaned down and whispered something to Wang Zhenxing, whose face suddenly changed. Then the middle-aged man turned and left quickly. When he came to the side of the door, he suddenly saw Xian. Huh? He turned his head as he walked. Finally he turned his gaze to see Zhang Han and Xian's face and looked at them carefully. He walked out of the hall thinking they looked so familiar. He shook his head and left in a hurry because there was still something to do. Good news. Wang Zhenxing clapped his hands with a smile. Seeing that everyone was quiet, he said in a loud voice, "The third master of the Wang family has reached a higher level in that field. He is our strongest supporter and the most family-minded person. I hope you can learn from him." Wow, he made it. Chairman Fan gasped in surprise, then hurriedly got up and bowed. Congratulations, the Wang family will certainly go to a higher level. Congratulations. On the first day of the new year, there is such good news. The Wang clan will have a smooth year. A lot of people echoed, which made Wang Zhenxing and Wang Saibai laugh with joy. Zhang Han scanned that yard with his soul sense, and found that Rong Chenjiang had made a breakthrough successfully. He was sitting cross-legged at the moment, making the final adjustment. The dozen people next to him looked tired, but they were all smiling. At noon, the guests left one after the other. Thanks to the news of Rong Chengjiang's breakthrough, several cooperation agreements between them and the Rong family had been further developed. After the guests left, the Rong family got together. Wang Saibai nodded to Rong Zhenxing and the others, then stood up and said, "This year's annual meeting is over, everyone can leave now. We are going to visit several families one by one. By the way." Just as they were going out, Wang Saibai took a look at Rong Sheng's side and snorted, "We all saw the importance of interpersonal relationships. We hope that some people will not boast anymore. They should do something practical instead of being family moths." Wang Saibai, Rong Zhenxing, Rong Zhenmao, Rong Fan and Rong Jin left together. Except for Rong Zhenxing, no one else took their wives with them. They all knew who Wang Saibai said these words to. Ha ha. Rong Sheng sneered and waved his hand. "Let's go back and hold a party by ourselves." They left and got back to Rong Sheng's villa for lunch. As for Wang Saibai, Zhang Han didn't want to pay any more attention to her. Zhang Li and the rest chose to ignore her, too. They didn't want her to affect their mood, as long as she didn't say too much. But they didn't expect that the truth was often revealed by others. Patriarch Rong Zhenxing, Director Rong Zhenmao and Major Rong Fan, their Zhao family in Linhai was one of the 8 famous families, which were under the top 3 families known as the Gu family, the Ning family and the Su family. The 8 families refer to the most representative families in various regions of Linhai, and their overall strength was slightly lower than that of the top 3 families. At that time, their Zhao family was holding a grand annual meeting, and there was an endless stream of people. Rong Zhenxing's position was not very high in this event. However, when he heard his name, swish, 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 in that small square, the celebrities, rich or powerful, sitting on both sides all turned their gazes to the visitor from the Rong family. All the famous figures in the martial arts world were surprised. They were confused by the Rong family's actions. Zhang Han Yang, Merciless Zhang, is now with the Rong family. Why don't they stay at home and try to establish a good relationship with him? Why are they here to wish us a happy new year? When will they realize that they lost a diamond while they were busy collecting stones? That man is Merciless Zhang. He was like a prehistoric Tyrannosaurus Rex, who was too fierce and powerful. Gu Donglai was a member of the Gu family. He specialized in saber skills and could protect the whole Gu family with his own strength. The other families in Linhai were all being suppressed by him. What was special about Zhang Han Yang? He was called Merciless Zhang in Hong Kong. He was also recognized as an invincible Grand Master by Xuanhuan. He killed He Kengshan, defeated Xiang Kishan of the mystical fog sect, suppressed all the talents from the world lit and even challenged North Tiger Gai Xing Kong, the owner of the Dragon Tiger Spear, with the demon dancing sword, his spoil of war. What an amazing achievement. Merciless Zhang had arrived in Linhai and caused new troubles. He killed Gu Shui, Gu Peng and their bodyguards without hesitation, in the face of Gu Shizhen, the local director of the National Security Agency, and the martial arts masters of several other forces. He had killed them without any reason. If it wasn't confirmed, no one of them would have believed it. That also helped them to understand the origin of Merciless Zhang. Currently, it all depended on the development of the situation. They were afraid that Gu Donglai would fight against Zhang Han Yang, and they were all paying attention to it. There were even many people ready to support Zhang Han Yang, but they dared not let others know. If Zhang Han Yang loses, he can escape and leave Linhai, but what will he do after that? They didn't dare to think anymore. Therefore, no one dared to curry Zhang Han Yang's favor at the moment, but due to the active martial arts world, the annual meetings of other families were much livelier than before. Take the Zhao family for example. Why are they all looking at us? Wang Saibai was confused and then became nervous. While looking forward, she kept glancing at both sides and felt her forehead sweating. She even felt a little scared, with all those famous people scrutinizing them. Gulp. Rong Zhenxing swallowed. feeling his throat dry. Then he forced a smile. He turned his gaze to the left and looked at Rong Zhenmao, Rong Fan and Rong Jin respectively. They found the same emotions in their eyes. Alas! Rong Fan suddenly sighed in astonishment. Then he said slowly, "I'm afraid there is a dragon in our family." "What?" Wang Saibai was stunned. In this case, she could no longer keep calm. Rong Jin's mouth slightly quivered as he reminded Wang Saibai, "We haven't attracted so much attention in the past years because we are weaker than the other families, but they are surprised to see us today. Don't you know what it means?" Wang Saibai lowered her head to ponder, and then her face changed. What do you mean?" "What they said is true. Such a young general. We seem to have missed a great opportunity. It's a pity." Major Rong Fan sighed because he knew the influence of a general. "If you can control yourself, maybe we can prove it." Rong Zhenxing looked at his wife, shook his head and said, "Well, let's talk about it later and focus on the meeting." Some of them were very active. If Wang Saibai hadn't quarreled with Rong Sheng before, they would have already investigated the news instead of just getting angry with Rong Sheng. Unfortunately, what had happened was not what they wanted, which made them uncomfortable. "Why are we attending another family's meeting instead of worshipping the dragon in our own family?" Since they had drawn an unusual amount of attention, which proved Rong Sheng's words, coupled with the stable impression they had of Rong Yong, they could confirm that the news was true. However, Rong Zhenxing of the Rong family, Wang Saibai, Rong Zhenmao, Rong Fan and Rong Jin, Happy New Year to Patriarch Zhao. Witnessed by those present, Rong Zhenxing and the others approached Patriarch Zhao and greeted him respectfully. "Don't be so courteous, come and sit down." Patriarch Zhao quickly stood up and went to meet them in person. The grand welcome was rare. The family members of the Rong family looked at each other and confirmed their previous ideas. They didn't expect that with the help of General Zhang's reputation, they could sit next to Patriarch Zhao. All of those seated nearby could shake Lin Hai with a move. At that time, they were a little worried. "Congratulations, Brother Rong, there is a dragon in your family. As long as this matter is solved, your family will be revitalized. Maybe even I will rely on you in the future." Patriarch Zhao waved and smiled at Rong Zhenxing. He gave up chatting with the people around him to receive them. What was important was that those who were ignored didn't mind it at all. Instead, they all approached to talk to Rong Zhenxing. "I think the Rong family will soon be one of the top 3 families in Lin Hai. Maybe it will be the 4th family. Patriarch Rong, you are so lucky and I envy you so much." All these words surprised Rong Zhenxing. Wang Saibai was afraid to say anything, because she felt that she was a little confused and was likely to make mistakes. She decided to wait until she calmed down. Rong Zhenxing and the others were busy smiling politely in response to all the greetings. Rong Zhenmao smiled and replied, "Thank you for your blessing, thank you. In fact, we didn't expect that there would be a general in our family." Though he tried to remain calm, he was actually excited. He is a general. However, hearing his words, the other guests were all confused. "General? Who is a general?" Patriarch Zhao asked. "Is there a general in your family? A double blessing." "Well." Rong Zhenmao didn't understand Zhao's words. "What's wrong with this? Isn't the man I spoke of the same? I wonder whom Patriarch Zhao referred to?" asked Rong Zhenxing in a low voice. "Huh?" Patriarch Zhao slightly raised his eyebrows. "You don't know? What should we know?" asked Rong Zhenxing. Patriarch Zhao slightly narrowed his eyes. "Isn't Xian at your home now?" "Yes." "Who is her husband?" "Zhang Han, the son of Rong Jiali, my 6th uncle's daughter." Swish. Many people's faces changed. "Isn't he Zhang Han Yang?" "Wait. They haven't received news yet." Patriarch Zhao's right hand slightly quivered. He secretly pinched his thigh, forced a smile, clapped his forehead and said, "Ouch, I'm old and I don't seem to have a good memory. I've got the wrong person." At this time, everyone else was silent and didn't say anything else. Rong Zhenxing and his followers were puzzled. What does he mean? Was he talking about someone else? Perhaps Zhang Han is not a general? Rong Yong would not lie, but Patriarch Zhao's change of attitude is not because of our general. Why? Who is Zhang Han Yang? Why is the name a little familiar? I remember someone mentioning this person at home. Why are things a little confusing? Rong Zhenxing and the rest looked at each other again, ready to sort out their thoughts and listen to other people's chats first. Chapter 588, Bureau Chief Rong? That man, I don't know what his plan is, we'd better not speculate. Patriarch Zhao looked at the others around him, nodded and said something that made the Rongs more confused. Yes. The bald middle-aged man on the other side echoed, talents like the Mahmudi, maybe because of something, he will promote someone or kill someone. We should pay attention to our words in order to avoid getting ourselves in trouble. This bald man was Rong Zhenxing's acquaintance, who was the owner of the Jinling Martial Arts Club. Why did the owner of a martial arts club sit the next to Patriarch Zhao? Rong Zhenxing clearly knew about this. That man's martial arts club was widely spread in Linhai City, forming a huge force. Moreover, Rong Zhenxing heard that he was a powerful figure in the martial arts circle and was also a martial arts grandmaster. Although the Rong family was not good at martial arts, the family members of the same generation as Rong Zhenxing or at the core level knew that people like Chi strength masters and martial arts grandmasters were very powerful. They didn't pay much attention to the martial arts world, because the business world had made them busy enough. They pursued money, not martial arts. After the bald man's comments, others echoed, we should look up to him, who is too powerful. Moreover, he is so domineering, having caused such a big trouble in Linhai. Only powerful individuals dare to do what they want. No, this time, it's all the young people of the Ge family who deserve it. If they didn't harass his wife with practical actions, would he still do it? No, it was their desire that killed them. It turns out that there is such a thing. If I were Zhang Han Yang, I would teach them a lesson, but I wouldn't kill them because of social pressure. The guests again began chatting. They were talking about this topic before Rong Zhenxing and the others came. However, they found that Rong Zhenxing and his family members didn't know Zhang Han Yang, so they decided not to disclose too much information. Rong Zhenxing and the others listened to them, feeling even more confused. Whom are they talking about? That man. Who is that man? What was more, they were surprised by the fact that the other guests were talking about the Ge family. The strength and status of the Ge family were many times stronger than the Rong family. What Zhang Han Yang did was like a storm sweeping over Linhai, but the Rongs didn't know about it. It was because the Rong clan was not very strong. They had been preparing the annual meeting and various reports during this period of time, and they didn't care about what happened outside. In addition, the only martial artists in the Rong family had been in the backyard all the time. Even if they heard about this, they were unwilling to go to the front yard specially to tell the other core family members. This made Rong Zhenxing a little passive. Because of the lagging news, they didn't understand what the other people were talking about. Well, let's not talk about that. At the end of the year, our family won many projects, and the specific number is about 13. All of you present, if you have any intention to cooperate, you can come to discuss with us. By the way, Patriarch Rong, I think there are 2 projects worth our cooperation. The words of Patriarch Zhao made Rong Zhenxing happy yet worried. He hadn't been treated like this before. Patriarch Zhao's idea was very good. Although Zhang Han Yang was in the Rong family, Patriarch Zhao couldn't attend the annual meeting of the Rong family, or he would offend the Ges. Since Patriarch Rong had showed up, he had to be warmly entertained, which showed the Rong family's courtship to Zhang Han Yang. Patriarch Zhao was very satisfied with this idea. If Zhang Han Yang won the fight, their investment would succeed. If he failed, it didn't matter because their contract hadn't been signed yet. Even though they had signed the contract, they would come up with other corresponding countermeasures. There was more than one family with the same idea of Patriarch Zhao. Rong Zhenxing left the Zhao family and went to visit the Hu family. Patriarch Hu ran down from his seat. Oh, Patriarch Rong, welcome, please take a seat. The Hu family was also one of the top 8 families, and Patriarch Hu usually didn't lift his eyelids when he saw Wang Zhenxing. Why was he so enthusiastic just then? Don't be so courteous, Patriarch Hu. Are you doing this because of that man? Wang Zhenxing forced a smile. That man? Patriarch Hu was confused. I just came here from the Zhao family, and they all said that man. Wang Zhenxing shook his head and said, Patriarch Hu, you can tell me the truth. Is that man a general? General? Ha ha ha, brother Wang, aren't you looking down on him too much? How could he be called after a military title considering his high status? Patriarch Hu laughed and said, please come in, let's have a good chat today. Thank you, Patriarch Hu. Just as Wang Zhenxing replied, Wang Jin's mobile phone rang. After answering the phone, he whispered to Wang Zhenxing in excitement, Patriarch, my grandfather has finished his cultivation. Third uncle left his yard. Wang Zhenxing paused. He happened to have something in mind, so he looked at Patriarch Hu and said apologetically, Patriarch Hu, my third uncle has finished his cultivation. I'm sorry but we have to go back to have a look first. We'll come back in the afternoon. It's okay, go ahead and do your own business. Don't worry about us. You're welcome at any time. Patriarch Hu personally sent them to the gate. When the Wrongs were about to get in their car, Patriarch Hu gave them a mysterious smile and said loudly, Patriarch Wrong, please give my regards to that person. Tell him that Hu Y has always admired him. Bang! Patriarch Wrong, Wang Saibai and the others almost lost their balance in astonishment. What's going on? It's frightening. Who the hell is that man? Is it Zhang Han? But he's only in his 20s. With doubt, they got in the car and quickly returned to the Wrong family's residence in 15 minutes. At the door of the house, the guard saluted and opened the door for them as usual. Everything seemed to be the same as usual. However, when they returned to the main house, they found 6 or 7 sweaty people standing in front of the door. Bang, bang, bang. Wang Zhenxing and the others opened the door and got off the car. Seeing his son sweating and acting impatient, Wang Zhenxing asked discontentedly, what happened? Why are you so nervous? I made a big mistake, Wang Zhenxing's son said anxiously. I hit Secretary Liu's car. Whose car? Wang Zhenxing's face changed. Secretary Liu's car. I just drove out and didn't know his car was coming. His voice was getting lower and lower. He was so nervous because that was Secretary Liu, the leader of Linhai City. Wait, why did Secretary Liu come to our house? Wang Saibai asked in a hurry. This is how it happened. At this time, a girl in her early 20s said, Secretary Liu came here about 20 minutes ago. Although my brother hit Secretary Liu's car, he didn't mind it at all. Besides, after him, there were a lot of famous people, such as the Patriarch Qi, Chairman Liu and the chairman of some large companies. They all went to visit Uncle Rongsheng and I don't know why. Now they are all there to celebrate the new year. Hearing the girl's words, bang! Wang Saibai and the others felt as if they were hit by lightning. Their faces changed slightly. At the moment, even Major Rong Fan and Director Rong Zhenmao couldn't keep silent. Let's go and have a look. Wang Zhenxing hurriedly said, and then took the lead to run to Rongsheng's villa. After running out for a few steps, he turned his head and said, as soon as third uncle comes out, tell him we are in Rongsheng's house. They started to run. When they arrived at Rongsheng's villa, they were shocked by what they saw. Lena 0001, it's Secretary Liu's car, right? One of the headlights on the right side of the car was damaged, which was caused by their son. Besides, a series of luxury cars were parked at will. There were even cars of famous people they knew. Why are there so many people here? Wang Saibai exclaimed, and then looked at Wang Zhenxing. What should we do? We have to go in. It's not too late, said Rong Jin in a deep voice. Even if it's late, we'll have to make up for it. Rong Zhenmao nodded. Let's go. Rong Zhenxing had no choice but to take the lead and enter the villa. They thought that all the people were chatting with each other there. But when they got in, the situation was different from what they imagined. A large group of people were sitting in the chairs next to them. They eventually watched Meng Meng's performance very carefully. At that time Meng Meng was in front of them, singing a song a bit bashfully. I heard that Mad Hatter likes Alice. Meng Meng had yet to memorize all the lyrics, so she skipped many sentences and sang the song off and on. Xian sat beside her and clapped according to the beat. Secretary Liu Qingfeng, as well as some important businessmen and family members, were all like students at this time, sitting in the same place, quietly watching Meng Meng's performance. Wow, if he's a nobody, I'll take my head off and use it to play football. Rong Zhenxing felt anxious, which was rare for him. Even Rong Zhenmao, Rong Fan, Rong Jin, and Wang Saibai were all a little confused at this time. They stood by carefully without daring to ask. Soon, Meng Meng finished her song with everyone's encouragement. Clatter. Liu Qingfeng took the lead and clapped. Their enthusiasm made Meng Meng feel a little embarrassed. Ma. Meng Meng hugged Xian's long legs and hid herself in her mother's arms. The others were amused by her. Ha ha ha. Secretary Liu laughed and shook his head. What a smart and lovely girl. She sang very well, and no wonder she is Mr. Zhang and Mrs.'s daughter. She is truly excellent. Of course. Zhang Han smiled while looking at Meng Meng proudly. In the eyes of a father, of course, his daughter was the best. Secretary Liu was good at making friends. He only said what he should say and what Zhang Han would like to hear, not nonsense. Zhang Han felt good about this. Director Rong. Secretary Liu wanted to say something to Rong Yong. However, before Rong Yong could answer him, Rong Zhenmao replied in a hurry, I'm here. You? Secretary Liu paused and turned to look at Rong Zhenmao. Zhenmao, I'm sorry that I didn't notice you. I'm talking with Rong Yong. Swish. Rong Zhenxing, Wang Saibai and Rong Zhenmao's faces showed their astonishment. Bureau Chief. Rong Yong is really a bureau chief now. Oh, chapter 589, someone from the Ge family? What he said before is true. Rong Zhenxing didn't know what expression to use. He looked at Secretary Liu, as well as all the influential people present, and finally turned his gaze to Zhang Han. At this moment, there were only a few words in his mind. He is a general. At this time, many people were looking at Patriarch Rong and his followers. Right then, Wang Saibai also knew that she had made a mistake. She shouldn't have been so aggressive. Zhang Han took a glance at them and asked calmly, what's the matter? Zhang Han's simple and casual words turned into a huge hammer, which hit them in the brain, as if to drive them away, leaving them a little at a loss. But their problems still needed to be solved. Wang Saibai tried to stand up and smiled awkwardly, saying, we are here to wish you Happy New Year and to clarify things. I see, it's not necessary. Zhang Han calmly shook his head and didn't add another word. He picked up Meng Meng and went back to the sofa. Zhang Han didn't care about them. Fundamentally speaking, they were not qualified to be Zhang Han's opponents. Only in order to help Rongsheng did Zhang Han reluctantly pay attention to them. At the moment, Zhang Han's attitude was very important. After Zhang Han finished his comment, Liu Qingfeng took a glance at Wang Saibai and frowned. Lady, could you do this another time? We are having a party right now. Clatter. Rong Zhenxing, Rong Zhenmao, Rong Fan and Rong Jin, who were regarded as the hope of the Rong family, all felt embarrassed. Secretary Liu slightly narrowed his eyes and looked at them with interest. At a glance, he knew that the Rong family members hadn't recognized Zhang Han before and had said something impolite. Luckily, they offended Rongsheng's branch instead of Zhang Han, or they would have suffered a lot. If she had targeted Zhang Han, she wouldn't have had a chance to continue talking. Secretary Liu shook his head and preferred to remain standing. He bowed and said with a smile, Mr. Zhang, I'm in a really good mood after watching your daughter's performance. I must leave now to visit my ex-chief. Oh, by the way, my ex-chief also heard about your coming. He said that Mr. Zhang should go and have a chat with him if you have time. I see. Zhang Han nodded. The others gasped in surprise after hearing their conversation. They all knew the identity of the elder who could be called ex-chief by Secretary Liu. He was the leader of the military region where Linhai was located. Many senior military officers in the south were his students. The invitation he extended to Zhang Han surprised many people, but Liu Qingfeng, Wang Ming and the others who were close to Zhang Han knew how powerful he was. In just a few months, all the members of the security group had reached the Qi Strength Master stage, which was a great achievement at a small cost. Goodbye, uncle. Meng whispered and waved her hand. If Secretary Liu didn't have a good hearing, he would have missed it. Bye. Secretary Liu waved to Meng, then glanced at the others, smiled and nodded. Goodbye. Goodbye, Secretary Liu. The other guests saw Liu leave the room. When he passed by Rong Zhenxing and the others standing by, he nodded slightly, and then walked to the door. Before he could reach the door, he saw several men coming in. Secretary Liu stopped and smiled. Third Uncle Rong, Happy New Year. I heard that you have made a breakthrough. Congratulations. Secretary Liu, nice to see you here. Happy New Year. Rong Chenjiang smiled, feeling surprised. He was really happy, with a smile on his face. He was in a good mood because of the breakthrough in martial arts and felt very proud at the same time. Even Secretary Liu came to visit him after he had made the breakthrough. However, when he saw what was happening inside, he found something strange. Why, Chairman Liu, Chairman Wang and Patriarch Wang, are they all here for me? Patriarch Bai has a much higher social status than me, and there's a man at the Grand Master late stage in his family. It's understandable that Chairman Liu and Chairman Wang are here to congratulate me, but why is Patriarch Wu, a Grand Master at the middle stage here? I've just reached the same stage as him, and he is more powerful than me. Happy New Year, everyone. I didn't expect to see all of you here. Rong Chenjiang laughed. All the 5 martial artists following him bowed to the guests. Happy New Year. On the first day of the Lunar New Year, Rong Chenjiang broke through to the stage of martial arts Grand Master, which was really gratifying. Just then, seeing their backbone coming, Rong Zhenxing and Wang Saibai gradually calmed down. Since Rong Chenjiang was there, they didn't have to worry about many things. Congratulations, third Uncle Rong. The other guests also greeted them, and some even looked at them with a little envy, such as Patriarch Wu. The Wu family had once been among the top 3 families in Linhai City, but they had been overwhelmed by the Ge family, eventually falling to the same stage as the 8 families in Linhai. Fortunately, they still had some social relationships, which helped them to remain the current stage. This time, he came to show Zhang Han Yang his support in front of the whole martial arts world of Linhai. If there had to be a fight, he was betting on Zhang Han Yang to be the winner. After they greeted each other, there was silence. After 3 seconds, Rong Jiaxin stood up and made an introduction. Third uncle, he is Zhang Han, my sister's son. I specially asked them to come here for the new year. So your parents are Jiali and Guang Yu? What a handsome young man. Rong Chenjiang took several steps forward, then nodded after looking at Zhang Han carefully. When he saw the beauty beside Zhang Han, his expression changed slightly. The lady seems familiar. Is she Zhang Li, Jiali's daughter? No, no, no. Rong Jiaxin laughed and shook her head. She is Zhang Han's wife. Did you see that little princess next to them? Ha ha ha. You may often see her on TV, that's why you think she is familiar. She is Xian, a big star. No wonder I feel as if I've seen her before. It turns out she's a star. It's great. You seem to get along well with each other. Wait, what's her name? Rong Chenjiang's expression suddenly froze. He turned around in a daze and looked at his followers. All his followers were stunned. Third uncle, Xian is that man's wife. That man in Hong Kong, one of the men whispered, shaking. That man in Hong Kong? Bang! It was like a flash of lightning hitting Rong Chenjiang head on. completely petrifying his body. Even his outstretched arms and his eyes were still. Now he looked like a statue. Wang Zhenxing and the others who were not in the martial arts circle were all confused. What's going on? Even Zhang Han and Xian were clueless. They didn't expect the man to react as strongly, to the point where he was in total shock before they could introduce themselves. I feel like a monster in their eyes. Am I that terrible? Zhang Han didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Third Uncle Rong? After 5 seconds, Secretary Liu whispered in Rong Chenjiang's ear. Oh. Rong Chenjiang's face changed as he screamed. Turning to look at Zhang Han, he asked with a trembling tone, "Are you Zhang Han Yang?" "It's me." Zhang Han pondered and nodded. Hiss. Rong Chenjiang gasped in shock and asked, "Are you Jiali's son?" "Yes." "Oh my." Rong Chenjiang was scared. "What's the reason? Why are you so powerful?" Liu Qingfeng and the other guests were all amused by him. They all burst out laughing. The expression and tone of their elder confused Wang Zhenxing and his followers. They stared at the scene and didn't know what to say. In fact, they didn't dare to make a sound. Rong Jiaxin smiled and said, "Third uncle, I wanted to tell you a few days ago, but you were busy breaking through. I didn't mention it at that time to avoid affecting your mood." "Ah." Rong Chenjiang waved his hand. "You should have told me that day so I could prepare for it. Now I'm a bit confused." "Nice to meet you, Grandmaster Zhang. I'm Rong So." At that time, all those martial artists following Rong Chenjiang realized what had happened, and a woman took the lead to greet Zhang Han. "Happy New Year, Grandmaster Zhang. I'm Rong Dian. They greeted Zhang Han one by one. Rong Chenjiang did not treat Zhang Han as a family member immediately. After all, he was seeing Zhang Han for the first time, so he knew nothing about him. He didn't dare to regard himself as Zhang Han's senior, lest he possibly becomes merciless Zhang's enemy. He'd better follow the rules of the martial arts world. Therefore, Rong Chenjiang bowed to Zhang Han and said with great enthusiasm, "Nice to meet you, Grandmaster Zhang. I'm Rong Chenjiang." Seeing his attitude, many faces started to change. It was a good way to say something polite first and then talk about their relatives. "Grandmaster." Wang Saibai was also stunned. She could no longer restrain her mood and wanted to make up previous attitude, so she bent down to salute. "Nice to meet you, Grandmaster Zhang." Wang Saibai had done something unpleasant and I hope you can forgive her. Rong Zhenxing. Their attitude confused Meng Meng a little bit. "Papa, what are they doing?" Meng Meng asked in a low voice, holding Zhang Han's hand. "This is..." Xian thought about it and replied in a low voice, "This is another kind of etiquette. Meng Meng will understand it when you grow up." Xian felt a little helpless. It was too early for Meng Meng to know, but she couldn't help it. Her husband was so powerful and he kept in contact with those from the martial arts world, which affected Meng Meng a lot. Luckily, Rong Jiaxin talked about it with Xian and suggested that they had better not introduce Meng Meng to the martial arts world too early or too late. It was proper to do so when Meng Meng was about 7 or 8 years old. Therefore, Xian did not restrain Meng Meng too much. She thought that when Meng Meng grew up, she might also carry a sword and follow Zhang Han happily to explore the relics. As soon as she imagined the picture of Meng Meng holding the sword with great effort, Xian felt it was very interesting. However, she felt that it would be several years before Meng Meng grew up. What a pity that Xian couldn't cultivate. Xian pursed her lips and stared at Zhang Han with her beautiful eyes. Zhang Han sensed her gaze, so he turned around to look at her. He smiled at Xian, he touched Meng Meng's head, and then waved his hand at Rong Zhenxing before they could finish greeting him. "Okay, Elder Rong, don't be so courteous, we are just here to celebrate the new year." "Yes, yes." Rong Zhenxing nodded in a hurry and made a slight movement. A stream of sweat dripped from his forehead. He hurriedly said, "It's my fault that I didn't treat you properly before. In fact, there are many things which are not like what they seem." As he was trying to explain, suddenly, a young man ran in from the door and exclaimed, The Ge family sent someone here. What? The faces of Patriarch Bai and the other guests changed. What has to come, will eventually come. Damn it. Rong Chenjiang was very surprised at this time. He couldn't close his mouth because of his smile. The Ge family also sent someone here. Ha ha ha. He smiled and looked at Zhang Han, trying to praise his influence. Then he saw the weird expression of the others. Is there anything strange on my face? Rong Chenjiang was surprised. They may be here to make trouble. Rong Chenjiang felt that there were some problems. Just as he expected. 3 people hurried in from the door. Seeing them, Rong Chenjiang's expression changed. The leader was a martial artist from the Ge family, who was at Grandmaster early stage. His name was Xuanhuan, and he was one of Xuanhuan's cousins. Xuanhuan, Gekong, Gesi. Nice to meet you, Grandmaster Zhang. They greeted Zhang Han as if he were the only person they could see in the room. After that, Xuanhuan slightly changed his face and tone. We all know what Grandmaster Zhang did in Linhai, and it's not necessary to talk about it now, Xuanhuan. The elder of the Ge family knew it, and he has been waiting for your explanation all these days. Get to the point, Zhang Han interrupted him casually. Xuanhuan was annoyed and he failed to keep his facial expression. Ha ha. Xuanhuan smiled. I'll go straight to it. Elder Gu wants to fight against you in Jinshaw Island 3 days later. Don't blame us if you are defeated or killed. What? Rong Chenjiang was stunned again. What did he say? Did I mishear? Xuanhuan wants to fight against Zhang Hanyang. Why? I have just got good news. Okay. Zhang Han accepted the challenge casually. Xuanhuan was confused because Zhang Han seemed to be unconcerned about Xuanhuan at all. Perhaps he intends to escape? Xuanhuan slightly frowned. Then it's settled. We'll distribute the news later, and all the people present will count as witnesses. Are there many local people here? Oh, you spout too much rubbish. Zhang Han glanced at Xuanhuan. Hiss. Xuanhuan's face slightly changed. The atmosphere was mighty. He felt Zhang Han was so frightening. Chapter 590, Don't kill envoys. Isn't it common sense in the martial arts world that envoys are not to be killed? Zhang Han Yang, you should know it as the top martial artist in this circle, and I want to convey the meaning of Elder Ge clearly. Xuanhuan was a little flustered, but he controlled his mood and spoke calmly. This time, he took the lead to go there for the dignity of the Ge family. Moreover, in the eyes of the Ge family members, Xuanhuan was invincible. Even if his rival was the famed Zhang Han Yang, he would finally be defeated by Xuanhuan. Wang Ming raised his eyebrows and asked, the challenge has been accepted, what else do you want to say? I just want to confirm this engagement now. Although you promised me, no one knows if you are sure about it. It will be regarded as a joke if you fail to show up on that day, so I want to remind you that you should honor the engagement since you promised. Otherwise, I'll keep all of you in mind. Xuanhuan once again scanned the other people present with his eyes. The faces of Patriarch Wu, Patriarch Bai and the other guests expressed different things. If Zhang Hanyang didn't accept the challenge, or left the wrong family directly, they would be the ones to bear the anger of the Ge family. Well, Patriarch Wu felt a little nervous and scared. If Zhang Hanyang didn't fight, it would be more complicated and I would be involved in it, but this is also an opportunity. It all depends on Zhang Hanyang's choice now. While thinking about it, Patriarch Wu turned his gaze to Zhang Han nervously. Patriarch Bai looked the same as him. In fact, their choice to be there was a gamble. Before they came, they had also thought about whether Zhang Hanyang would fight, whether he would retreat, and whether the Ge family would blame him, but in the end, they came to the conclusion that if the Ge family chose not to settle down, Zhang Hanyang would most likely fight, because he had never retreated, but they were still a little nervous when the moment of truth arrived. After all, this matter had something to do with their future development. In their plan, if Zhang Hanyang won the battle, then the reign of the Ge family would come to an end, the wrong family would rise to the top, and the families who sided with them ahead of time, would certainly prosper. They had been in decline for a long time, and thus they were unwilling to give up such an opportunity. It was definitely a gamble. Imagination was beautiful, but reality was cruel. They thought that since Zhang Han had spent the new year as a relative of the Wrong family, the relationship between the Wrong family and him had to be very good, but they saw their mistake once Patriarch Wrong showed up. Patriarch Wrong also offended Zhang Han. The situation doesn't look good. Has this road been blocked before it started? They were all worried, and Wang Chenjiang's expression was very stiff. Such amazing news. Just before he could celebrate his breakthrough to the middle stage, Wang Jiali's son was the famous Zhang Han, and barely 2 minutes after, there was another amazing piece of news. Gudonglai wanted to fight against Zhang Han. He felt like he was on a roller coaster. Rong Zhenxing, Rong Zhenmao and Rong Fan were all stunned. Is he going to challenge the Gu family, the lord of Linhai City? Is the Wrong family the center of the vortex? At this time, Gu Zonglai saw their frightened expressions and felt less pressure from Zhang Han. The Gu family is the greatest. Zhang Han, your relatives are all afraid of us. He was very satisfied with the effect of the challenge. After thinking about it, he finally looked at Zhang Han and said in a low voice, Zhang Han, I hope you talk too much. Zhang Han sighed and waved his right hand. Bang! An invisible spiritual sense energy, like a long sword, was formed in front of Gu Zonglai and attacked him with an unstoppable momentum. Gu Zonglai's face changed. He hurriedly activated his spiritual sense to protect himself. But he never thought that in his mind, the vast spiritual sense energy in front of him would turn into a flash of lightning in an instant, reaching his brow before he could resist it. Bang! It was like a thunderclap in his head, and then his eyes began to lose focus. He was just a martial artist at Grandmaster middle stage, and Zhang Han had too many methods to kill him. His 10 inches Danshan, the 4,000 clouds and the Ti would thunder in his soul sense sea were all Zhang Han's trump cards and potential. He would be unable to use them to their fullest potential until he reached the innateness state. As for the building base stage, it was just an entry stage. Several people on the scene sensed the change in Gu Zonglai's chi, and their faces changed a lot in an instant. This. The 2 martial artists who followed Gu Zonglai were pale, and one of them was trembling. He didn't dare to speak. Another man with a flat-top haircut was completely frightened at the moment, but he managed to keep his cool. He said, envoys can't be killed in a war. It's common sense in the martial arts world. Grandmaster Zhang, it's not right for you to do so. Do I need the consent of others? Zhang Han slightly frowned and there was a flash of light in his eyes. Ah! The brave martial artist in front of him was also killed. The trembling martial artists of the Gu family turned around and fled. Zhang Han ignored them. Gu Zonglai and the man with the flat-top haircut turned to the door as usual. But when they walked more than 10 meters beyond the door, clatter, they were drowned in flames, burning to ashes in 2 seconds. This made the last fleeing martial artist's eyes to almost pop out because of fear. He screamed several times and ran away without looking back. He didn't even dare to take the car they drove to get there. Meng, let's play with toys upstairs for a while. Zhang Han's stern gaze became soft again. He held Meng in his arms and walked to the 2nd floor with Ziyan. Zhang Li, Wang Yi and Zhu all followed the family, but they didn't realize that those 3 men had been killed. After they left, the remaining guests in the room began discussing. My God, it's scary. Rong Chenjiang's palm slightly shook, and he was at a loss. Gu Zonglai, a middle-stage grandmaster, was easily killed by Zhang Han. Zhang Han, he is too frightening. Is he Jiali's son? What's going on?